Hey yo, everyone! With the success of video game adaptations such as The Last of Us, Sonic the Hedgehog, and most recently, Fallout, I've been wondering, has Hollywood finally cracked the code on the video game genre? For years, video game adaptations haven't necessarily been getting the love they deserve. Who am I kidding here? Video game adaptations have flat out sucked ass for basically my entire life. But things are different now. So today, let's talk about video game adaptations and how Hollywood might have finally figured out the video game genre. If you enjoy the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Alright, let's get it. So Amazon just released their numbers and the Fallout TV show had 65 million viewers in its first 16 days of availability. That is just incredible. And in my mind, very well deserved because the show is just great. Because of this massive success, Xbox has begun a fast track for the next Fallout entry, even going as far as saying that they could have Obsidian, the original Fallout New Vegas team, work on the project if Bethesda is too busy with Starfield DLC and Elder Scrolls 6 development. That's wild. I mean, when was the last time a video game adaptation was so successful that it warranted another game in the franchise? If this doesn't scream that video game adaptations are finally good now, then I don't know what else would. So all of this success has got me wondering how and why video game movies and TV shows are so good now. Well, I have a couple ideas of my own and a few better ideas from people smarter than me online. Let's start with mine first. The way I see it, there are three distinct routes a studio can go. Number one, same characters, same story. This would be what we consider a traditional adaptation, with the most recent example being The Last of Us. This route, to me, has a 50-50 shot of working out. I'm sure there's a reason why a specific video game is being chosen for this adaptation, but it's difficult to adapt a game's narrative beat for beat into traditional TV or film. The Last of Us success is more of an exception rather than the rule. You see, you have to be careful when doing this because if it's just a retelling of the story beat for beat, then you have to absolutely nail it. Otherwise, people will just draw comparisons to the game or ask why did you do this if you're just making a crappier version of the video game story. Okay, number two, same characters, new story. I think this route has the lowest risk of the three options. You get the name recognition of the beloved characters, but still have the freedom to tell a story that better fits the medium, whether that's a TV show or a movie. People might be a bit disappointed that it's not a story that they're super familiar with, but if the plot aligns with what people expect from the character or video game that they're pulling from, then I think it's forgivable. This would be like a Mortal Kombat or Detective Pikachu or Super Mario Bros. Movie. Yeah, I guess there are some new characters in there, but it's mostly the recognizable ones. And lastly, point number three. New characters, new story. To me, this one is high risk, high reward. You're able to use the world and brand recognition of whatever franchise you're adapting, and you get to write a new character specifically for the story you want to tell. The most recent and successful example being Fallout. For this route to work, however, it has to be a very specific type of game. For example, you couldn't really do this with like a Legend of Zelda or Uncharted franchise where there's this consistent protagonist. It has to be one where the game's story isn't as linear or predetermined, if you will, a la Minecraft or Pokemon or, of course, Fallout. Fallout works because it's an RPG where you get to create your own character and make your own decisions. So basically, every playthrough has some form of individuality to it, meaning that if you wanted to adapt it to TV, you'd have an incredibly difficult time doing it because everyone's experience is just a little bit different. That's why I think the showrunners absolutely nailed the Fallout formula. You take this interesting setting, use the plot from the video games, or at least the world building aspects of it, and then plop in some new characters with new goals. You get the fan servicey moments with the power suits and vaults, but you can also tell a story that isn't restricted by following the narrative of the source material. But you gotta be careful here because if you change too much or don't include enough of the source material, people might feel as if this is just an adaptation in name alone. So those are my three interpretations of how modern video game adaptations are made and why they would or wouldn't work. I guess you could slide in a fourth option in there for movies like Gran Turismo or Tetris, but whatever. After doing some actual research instead of just gushing out the nonsense that fills my head, I found this great article from The Ringer. I'll link this below, and I highly recommend giving it a read if this stuff interests you. Anyway, the author of the article, Ben Lindbergh, lists 4 reasons on why he thinks that video game adaptations are good now, and I'm gonna be honest with you guys, he brings up some fucking fantastic points. Point number 1, gamers are getting older. What I mean by this is that the people who are making movies and TV shows now are the people who grew up playing video games. This isn't like the 90s and early 2000s where video games were still a fairly new thing and the people adapting them didn't quite understand what they were working with. No. Today, video games are now a major player in modern media. Because this new generation of filmmakers are being ushered in, they can use their experience and passion for these franchises to make an adaptation that respects the source material while still being a competent product for TV or film. They're fans of what they're making, so of course they're going to put in the extra effort to make the best movie or show possible. It seems like an obvious point, I know, but it wasn't necessarily true until like the last 5 years or so. The second point, Lindbergh says that the people who make the adaptations now tend to work with the people who made the game. Gone are the days where a movie studio would gobble up the rights to make a video game adaptation without consulting the video game developers. Now, directors and showrunners will work hand in hand with the directors and developers of the game they are adapting. For example, Neil Druckmann worked closely with HBO to help reshape The Last of Us into a format that works for TV. These IPs are precious to the publishers, so they're not just going to blindly hand over the creative rights without at least having some say in it. And because how massive the gaming industry is now in 2024, game devs have a ton more leverage when it comes to the creative side of adaptations. And I don't think we need another Mario Bros. Movie like we got from the 90s. The third point, the way we consume TV and film is different these days. I was just talking to my friend about this the other night. It was mostly likely going to happen anyway, but the pandemic really sped up the evolution of streaming services. Now that companies like Disney and HBO and Amazon have their own first-party streaming platform, they're willing to dump more money into their TV shows and movies to win over subscribers. Because they're not sharing this revenue with other studios or having to pay for any distribution fees, they can invest more into IPs that they think will win over customers, IPs with a proven fan base, with video game adaptations, of course, being at the top of that list. I mean, look at all of the adaptations that are streaming exclusive. Fallout on Amazon, Twisted Metal on Peacock, The Last of Us on Max, the list goes on and on. The bigger budget is one thing, but the more important part of releasing these adaptations on streaming platforms is that they're making these video games into TV shows, not movies. Instead of having to cram a 40-hour story into a 2-hour window, showrunners have the flexibility to flesh out these characters and narratives into a medium that better translates from the source material. Being able to really dive into these worlds is what made us fall in love with the video game in the first place, so it just makes sense to try and recreate that magic in a way that doesn't have as many trade-offs, which you would unfortunately have to deal with a movie. And lastly, the fourth reason that Lindbergh brings up is that video game stories have just gotten better over time. Back in the day, the big titles were more about the gameplay than anything else, such as Mario, Street Fighter, Need for Speed, and so on. Similar to that first point, as time went on and the fans of these games began to grow up and learn how to make video games themselves, the stories became more personal, more intricate. This, plus a combination of better technology and bigger budgets, has allowed narratives in video games to bloom to massive heights. Lindbergh says that as greater processing power and storage space allowed for realistic graphics, more expansive settings, fully voiced lines, increased interactivity, and lifelike motion-captured animation, storytelling in video games evolved. Back then, a video game was more about the spectacle of exciting new gameplay ideas or mind-blowing graphics, but now, there's a much larger emphasis on story and becoming immersed in the world of the game. Better stories to adapt leads to better adaptations with better results. Who would have thunk? Alright, so let's do a quick recap. There are 4 main reasons as to why video game adaptations have finally gotten good these past few years. Number 1, the people behind the adaptations are gamers and fans of the source material. Number 2, the original creative minds behind the games are sticking around and staying involved with the production. Number 3, the evolution of TV and film has allowed video games to be translated more effectively. And number 4, the stories have become more mature with great character development and world building. With these 4 factors in mind, movie studios can take their productions in the 3 or 4, if you want to include Tetris, directions that I mentioned earlier. Same character, same story, same character, new story, or new character, new story. Honestly, I think any of these routes will work out as long as the 4 reasons I listed earlier are met first. So, in conclusion, because of everything that we just talked about, video game movies and TV shows are finally f***ing good, man. We have survived the 90s and early 2000s adaptations of games and are entering a new era for this genre. It's extremely exciting. I mean, we did it, fellas. But I want to know what you guys think. Have you seen Fallout yet? What are your thoughts on all of these new movies and TV shows? Which one is your favorite so far? What gaming franchise deserves to be made into a movie or TV show next? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It means a lot. I appreciate you guys as always, and I'll catch you in the next one.